As a writer and a filmmaker who is constantly trying to hone my storytelling skills, every year I make a list of what I call the 50 greatest movies to watch. It's a self-made film school curriculum. In my film school curriculum, I break movies into categories. And in this video, I'll share a movie from several of the categories. And at the end of the video, I'll list all of the movies and all of the categories. Sort of like end titles scrolling at the end of a movie, appropriately enough. So here it goes. My 50 greatest movies to watch of 2022. The category I'll start with is films by Black filmmakers. One of the movies from this category that I most enjoyed watching this year is Love Jones. I don't know how it's possible that I'd never before seen this iconic piece of African American cinema from 1997. I had the soundtrack when the movie came out, and I often jammed to the neo-soul classics like Hopeless by Dionne Farris and Something Something by Maxwell. But for some reason, I never got around to actually watching this movie about the on-again, off-again romance between a photographer, played by Nia Long, and a poet, played by Lawrence Tate. I think the thing that I most enjoyed about Love Jones is, as the title implies, it portrays something that is not seen often enough on the big screen: Black love. The supporting cast includes Isaiah Washington, pre-Grey's Anatomy, comedian Bill Bellamy, and Lisa Nicole Carson of Ally McBeal fame. Written and directed by Theodore Witcher, Love Jones made $12.7 million off of a $7 million budget, according to Wikipedia. I highly recommend checking this one out if you haven't already. The next category I'll discuss is films by women directors. One of the movies I watched in this category in 2022 is Now and Then, a 1995 comedy drama about four women friends reuniting in their small Indiana hometown and reflecting on their childhood adventures. The all-star cast includes Rosie O'Donnell, with Christina Ricci playing Rosie's younger self, Demi Moore and Gabby Hoffman, Melanie Griffith and Thora Birch, and Rita Wilson and Ashley Ashton. Similar to Love Jones, Now and Then fills a much-needed void, a movie that centers on the lives and experiences of female characters. And while I appreciate screenwriter I. Marlene King and director Leslie Linka Glatter making a female counterpart to Rob Reiner's classic coming-of-age movie Stand By Me, Now and Then lacks something very important: diversity. Despite its girl power theme, the movie makes zero effort at diversity. I mean, how hard would it have been to make one of the characters a Black girl and explore how that character not only dealt with all the complexities that preteen girls face, but racism on top of everything else? How about casting, say, Halle Berry or Vivica Fox or Vanessa Williams as one of the girlfriends? In fact, the only character of color that I noticed in Now and Then was a very minor character, an incompetent Black limousine driver. Not exactly fodder for an NAACP Image Award. However, despite bad reviews upon its release, Now and Then made $37.5 million off of a $12 million budget and has become a cult classic. And personally, I think the movie is worth watching if you're someone who is interested in how women are portrayed on film and to learn what to do and what not to do when it comes to diverse casting. On the flip side, a movie that has a surprising amount of diversity for the time period it was filmed in is Oscar Micheaux's Within Our Gates, which falls into a category that I call classics. This 1920 silent film is considered the oldest known surviving film by a Black director. Within Our Gates portrays a character who goes on a journey, a Black woman who travels north from the South to raise money for an all-Black academy located in the Deep South. Along this journey, the woman discovers that she's mixed race, and she realizes how much racism has impacted her life and the lives of other Black Americans. Within Our Gates is truly a groundbreaking movie in its brutally accurate depiction of race in America. It's astounding that Michaud was able to hire so many white actors to portray racist characters on screen. The movie is ahead of its time, and so was Oscar Michaud, who financed and distributed his own movies. All of us filmmakers, especially Black filmmakers, owe him a debt of gratitude. Within Our Gates is available to watch for free on YouTube, which is how I saw it. Another movie that's ahead of its time in how it portrays social issues is the gripping thriller M, which falls into the foreign film category on my film school curriculum list. I couldn't find the 1931 original German movie directed by Fritz Lang and starring Peter Lorre, so I ended up watching the 1951 American remake directed by Joseph Losey and starring veteran character actor David Wayne as a child murderer. M explores a lot of themes that we're still grappling with as a society, about how people who commit heinous acts should be punished, and whether it's morally right for everyday people to take the law into their own hands and exact revenge on criminals. Something that's of particular interest about M is that it established tropes about how serial killers are depicted in movies, portraying them as tortured souls who have moments when they look at themselves in the mirror and realize that what they're doing is wrong, but they can't stop themselves. The American remake of M is available to watch on YouTube, which is where I found it. Something else that I had trouble finding but ultimately located on YouTube is an obscure 1980 movie called Fatso, which falls into a category of movies that I watch every year about people with body issues. Fatso, a comedy about the ups and downs of weight loss, pun intended, stars Dom DeLuise as an obese man who is inspired to lose weight after his cousin dies from health complications. A running theme in my greatest movies to watch curriculum this year has been movies that are ahead of their time, and Fatso definitely fits that description. Despite its politically incorrect title, the message of Fatso is about self-acceptance, a story about body positivity before that term even existed. There are many hilarious scenes in Fatso, such as when Dom DeLuise instructs his brother and roommate to put padlocks on the kitchen cabinets and refrigerator to keep Dom DeLuise from binge eating at night. Now that's something that I struggle with myself. And then Dom DeLuise gets so hungry watching food being depicted on television that he gets up and holds a gun to his brother's head to get him to open up the kitchen. In addition to the fact that Fatso is laugh out loud funny and really touching in certain scenes, of special note is that it's the only movie that the legendary Anne Bancroft wrote, directed, and starred in. She plays Dom DeLuise's overbearing yet well-meaning sister in the film. I definitely recommend checking out Fatso, if you can find it. Another movie that I had trouble finding is the latest cinematic adaptation of Shakespeare's Macbeth, starring Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand. This 2021 Oscar-nominated movie was only available on certain streaming services that I don't subscribe to, so I had to change gears and watch a 1979 TV movie version of Macbeth starring Ian McKellen and Judi Dench that, once again, I found on YouTube. Macbeth fits into a category of movies that I watch every year called Stage to Screen. I read the play and then I watch the movie adaptation. The 1979 version of Macbeth, about a doomed military general who plots alongside his scheming wife to become King of Scotland, is a master class in how to stage a play by focusing on nothing but the performances. With a minimalist set, simple costumes, and very few props, McKellen, Dench, and a stellar cast turn in powerhouse performances, and of course you'd expect nothing less. Stumbling upon this bare-bones version of Macbeth, only when I couldn't find the more elaborate Hollywood version with Denzel, turned out to be a blessing in disguise for me as a writer. In 2013, I wrote and directed a play called The Springtime of Our Lives, which is sort of a modern urban version of Romeo and Juliet. And I learned from watching this 1979 TV movie version of Macbeth of just how to stage a production in an efficient and cost-effective way. The 1979 TV movie version of Macbeth is a must-watch for anyone in theater. Also in the stage to screen category, I have to give an honorable mention to The Pajama Game, the 1957 movie adaptation of the hit Broadway play starring Doris Day, no rhyme intended, and John Raitt, Bonnie Raitt's father. While researching this movie, I learned that the play was actually based on an obscure 1953 novel titled 7½ Cents by author Richard Bissell. Continuing the theme of stories that were ahead of their time, The Pajama Game, set in a factory that manufactures pajamas, explores themes that we're still talking about today. The right of workers to have a living wage, the pros and cons of workplace unions, women's rights, and the fact that they deserve to have fulfilling careers and to be on equal footing with men. The novel 7½ Cents is a bit hard to find, but I eventually was able to download the Kindle version. The Pajama Game movie musical is available on Amazon Prime Video, or at least it was when I watched it in July 2022. And a quick aside, have you noticed lately that a lot of people pronounce pajamas as pajamas? In the movie, they say pajamas, or at least that's how I remember them saying it. Anywho, another TV movie that made it onto my greatest movies to watch list is the miniseries Scruples, which aired on CBS in February 1980. Scruples is based on the best-selling novel by Judith Krantz. And the reason I watched it is because, shameless plug, my fiction series, The Chloe Chronicles, which will be released in 2023, is sort of in the same genre. Scruples is about beautiful people jet-setting around the world in glamorous settings like New York, Los Angeles, and the south of France. And so is my Chloe Chronicles series. However, my series puts an updated, modern spin on the genre with characters of color. There isn't much diversity in the Scruples miniseries other than black actors in a couple of minor roles. The star of the show is Lindsay Wagner, playing Billy Eichhorn, the proprietor of a luxurious Beverly Hills boutique called, you guessed it, Scruples. As a Generation X kid in the 70s, I have vague memories of Lindsay Wagner in the TV series The Bionic Woman. Until I watched Scruples, I didn't realize how beautiful and talented Lindsay Wagner is. She does a credible acting job with material that some might say is kind of trashy. Throughout this movie, Wagner talks in an exaggerated, rich lady upper crust accent. Since her character Billy Eichhorn is from Boston, maybe Wagner was trying to approximate a New England accent without dropping the R's, you know, hock the ka. Scruples was part of a trend of the big, splashy TV miniseries and soap operas of the 80s, like Dallas, Dynasty, and Falcon Crest. Scruples has several soap opera tropes, like characters being married multiple times and having comically long last names because of how many times they've walked down the aisle. The full name of Lindsay Wagner's character is Wilhelmina Winthrop Eichhorn Orsini. Try saying that 3 times. Scruples was directed by Alan J. Levi and adapted for television by screenwriter James Lee. For writers like myself who plan to adapt books into screenplays, I'd recommend watching Scruples to see how the screenwriter captured the essence of the nearly 600-page novel, compressed the plot, and even added a few subplots to ratchet up the tension. For example, in the book, the main character, Billy, has an affair with a young man who is an employee at her elderly husband's sprawling estate. Billy eventually fires the young man, paying him off to keep quiet about the affair. But in the TV movie, this minor character takes on a much larger role, becoming a deranged stalker and murderer who torments Billy. The producers of the TV miniseries also eliminated a ridiculous, implausible subplot from the novel in which an actress and her publicist steal Academy Award envelopes from the accounting office of Price Waterhouse so that they can find out who the winners are ahead of time. Instead, in the TV movie, Lindsay Wagner's character and a close friend steal the negatives of a movie from a vault so that Wagner's husband, who is producing the movie, can continue editing the movie without the studio's heavy-handed meddling. Another thing that the producers of the TV miniseries Scruples do that is really different from the novel is that they really tone down the love scenes. And in the book, the love scenes are outright sex scenes. I was actually surprised at how pornographic the book is. And one writer actually called Scruples something like a boink fest. And that's actually an accurate description of the book. But of course, with broadcast television, you can't have explicit love scenes, even with the more relaxed primetime standards of soap operas. So that's something that really stands out, is how much fewer love scenes and how tame the love scenes are in the TV miniseries as compared to the book. So in addition to being transported to glamorous settings like the luxury shops lining Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills and the Cannes Film Festival in the French Riviera, the fun of watching Scruples is that it's a trip down memory lane, a glimpse into a bygone era of television. It was nostalgic seeing 70s actors like Lindsay Wagner, Barry Bostwick from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Robert Reed from the Brady Bunch. The cast also includes a very young Kim Cattrall, playing a model-turned-actress. For some odd reason, Cattrall, who obviously had not yet appeared in Sex and the City at this point, is listed in the credits of Scruples as a guest star, alongside more established actors like Gavin MacLeod from The Love Boat and Mary Tyler Moore. Like many of the older, more obscure titles on my greatest movies to watch list, I had trouble finding Scruples on streaming services. I finally located a DVD copy of the miniseries on Amazon. If you're a movie buff like me, it definitely doesn't hurt to keep a DVD or a Blu-ray player around to watch older movies that are no longer available to watch on streaming services. One movie that is thankfully available to watch on several streaming platforms is the 1988 drama Stand and Deliver, which falls into a category in my film school curriculum that I call Films by Latinx Directors. I'm learning to speak Spanish, and in the process of acquiring any language, I think it's important to study up on the culture, and Stand and Deliver offers a nuanced perspective on the Latinx community in America. Directed by Ramon Menendez and written by Menendez and Tony Musca, Stand and Deliver is based on the true story of now legendary Los Angeles High School mathematics teacher Jaime Escalante. For his portrayal of Escalante, Edward James Olmos was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor. Escalante was an innovative teacher who helped underachieving students in his underfunded public school district not only boost their test scores in math, but far exceed the low expectations of other teachers, administrators, and even some of the students' own parents. Stand and Deliver is inspiring, a classic story of the underdog overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. It's a movie that defies stereotypes. Now, there are Latino gang members depicted in Stand and Deliver, such as Lou Diamond Phillips's character, but that character eventually redeems himself and gets serious about his education. And the movie balances out the depiction of gang members by portraying altruistic educators like Jaime Escalante and hardworking everyday people who just want the best for their children. Similar to Love Jones, I don't know why I didn't get around to watching Stand and Deliver until now. The cast includes two actors from one of my favorite movies of all time from the same era, La Bamba, Lou Diamond Phillips and Rosanna De Soto as Jaime Escalante's devoted wife, Fabiola. The movie also stars another favorite actor of mine, Andy Garcia as Ramirez, an investigator with the Educational Testing Service. This academic organization unfairly doubts how the dedication of one teacher could have had such a dramatic, positive impact on a group of students who had been pigeonholed as slow learners and kicked to the curb. Stand and Deliver is definitely worth watching. Although it wasn't a huge hit when it was first released, it made just $13.9 million off a $1.6 million budget. It is now widely considered a cinematic treasure. In addition to Olmos's Oscar nomination, the film won the 1988 Independent Spirit Award for Best Feature. In 2011, Stand and Deliver was selected for preservation by the United States National Film Registry, by the Library of Congress, for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. While the purpose of my film school curriculum is to study some of the greatest movies ever made, in hopes that some of that greatness will rub off on me as a writer and a filmmaker, it's just as important to study what not to do. In fact, a category on my list every year is actually called What Not to Do. Films in this category are infamous flops, movies considered so bad that they've gone down in history as examples of the absolute worst that the movie industry has to offer. The movie that I watched in 2022 that falls into this category is Ishtar, the notorious 1987 adventure comedy film written and directed by Elaine May and starring Dustin Hoffman and Warren Beatty. In Ishtar, Hoffman and Beatty play a down-on-their-luck singer-songwriter duo, similar to Simon and Garfunkel, according to Wikipedia's description of the film. However, unlike Simon and Garfunkel's profound and poetic lyrics, Hoffman and Beatty composed tunes that sound like corny commercial jingles or offbeat novelty songs in the vein of Weird Al Yankovic. Hoffman and Beatty's characters are poorly received, not surprisingly, on the open mic scene in New York City. So when an offer comes in to become lounge singers at a hotel in Marrakesh, Morocco, they figure they have nothing to lose and decide to try their luck in this exotic desert locale. Needless to say, mayhem ensues. At the time of its release, Ishtar was excoriated by critics and flopped so bad that it's considered one of the worst movies ever made. At the box office, Ishtar grossed just $14.4 million off of a $51 million budget. Despite Ishtar's initial disastrous release, in recent decades, many critics have reevaluated the movie and now consider it an underrated comedy that has been misunderstood and unfairly dismissed. I have to say that my opinion fits into this camp of people who think Ishtar isn't so bad. I didn't see Ishtar when it first came out, just like the rest of the movie-going public. And if I hadn't known before watching this movie as an adult that it was considered one of the worst flops in movie history, I would have just assumed it was just another quirky 80s buddy flick like 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte, or Tango and Cash with Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell. Hoffman and Beatty turn in decent comedic performances in Ishtar, and some of their musical numbers are genuinely hilarious. It's interesting that Hoffman and Beatty were able to keep working after Ishtar, but the movie's poor reception nearly destroyed Elaine May's career. After Ishtar, she reportedly didn't work on another movie again for almost an entire decade. I think Ishtar exemplifies the double standard that, unfortunately, still exists to this day in Hollywood. Women and people of color have to hit a home run and hit it out of the ballpark every time, or they're out of the game. I'd recommend watching Ishtar and making up your own mind about it for yourself. I watched it on Amazon Prime Video. A quick note about Ishtar. So I recorded the segments on Stand and Deliver and Ishtar separately from the segments about the other movies because that's just how my schedule worked out. So after I recorded the segments about Ishtar and Stand and Deliver, I had to go run an errand. And on the way home from the errand, I was trying to remember which segments I had just recorded, and I remembered Stand and Deliver. But for the life of me, I could not think of the other movie. I kept racking my brain, and finally I remembered it was Ishtar. So that says a lot about Ishtar. It's not so much that it's a horrible disaster the way it was originally portrayed when it was released, it's that it's utterly forgettable. There are some bad movies like The Room or Showgirls that people have midnight viewings of in theaters, because they're so bad it's good. People watch them over and over and, shout the lines at the screen. With Ishtar, I can't imagine having a midnight showing and having fun reciting the dialogue. You wouldn't even remember the dialogue. Maybe, you could have sing-alongs with the little corny songs that Dustin Hoffman and I almost forgot his name, see? Forgettable. Warren Beatty have in the movie. But Ishtar, it's like once you've seen it, there's no reason to watch it again. So I think that's the thing about Ishtar. It's not that it's this horrible debacle, it's that it's forgettable. Thank you for watching my roundup of the best and worst movies of 2022, even if they weren't actually released in 2022. Here's wishing you happy moviegoing and viewing in 2023 and beyond. A quick program note: while I refer to my film school curriculum as the 50 greatest movies to watch, in 2022, I didn't actually get around to finding 50 movies to put on the list. So you'll notice that my list this year is a little short. In putting the list together, I do a lot of research, pulling from diverse sources such as recommendations by accomplished filmmakers like Spike Lee and Martin Scorsese. I also Google phrases such as the best movies by Black filmmakers, top movies by women filmmakers, and the best foreign films that have been nominated for Oscars. Sometimes it takes me so long to compile the list that it's springtime or later before I even start watching the movies that I've assigned myself to study throughout the year. And oftentimes what happens is that at the end of the year, there's this big crunch, a whole bunch of movies that I haven't gotten around to watching yet. In years past, I'd stress myself out and spend a significant portion of the holidays glued to the TV, catching up on my film school curriculum. I'd act as though if I didn't watch every movie on my list before midnight on December 31st, I'd get a failing grade in this self-made film school class. Now, while I'm a big believer in self-discipline, I also believe in self-care. So this year, I'm giving myself a break, and I'm going to push the movies that I didn't get around to watching onto next year's list of the greatest movies to watch. In the following list, I'll note the movies that I didn't get around to watching in 2022 and that I've pushed back to 2023. And another quick program note, I want to give a shout out to those who have made this content possible through their generous support on Patreon throughout 2022. My friends Michael Lee and Michelle Burr. As of this recording, I plan to pause my Patreon page at the end of the year to focus on finishing up and releasing two big projects that I've been working on for years: my Chloe Chronicles fiction series and my new feature film, Things Are Tough All Over, about a family struggling to keep their heads above water during the Great Recession of 2008. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and to all my friends and family who support my work. Your love, friendship, and support motivates me to keep creating, and I appreciate your support more than you'll ever know. So, with all that said, here's my full list of the best and worst movies of the year. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think about the movies on this list by leaving a comment. I look forward to getting your perspective. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think about the movies on this list by leaving a comment. I look forward to getting your perspective. And hold, and hold, and hold, and we out. If you like this video, please leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to my channel.